You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network. EJ Hradek here, and it's the great privilege that I have today to be joined by my colleague at the NHL Network and longtime NHL player, 729 NHL games, and they were hard games that this young man played in. My buddy Stu Grimson down in Nashville, Tennessee, where he lives. Stu, thanks for taking the time today. I appreciate it.
Oh, EJ, glad to be with you. Always glad to be with you. Wonderful to see you in a different format, maybe a different platform. So
that's correct. Yes.
Glad to have some time with you. Always good to catch up.
So let me just start by asking you a few things about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the offseason. I mean, it really was a good year for them last year. They won their division. They hadn't won a division in a regular 82 game season, in 20 some odd years. They won the division. They gave the Florida Panthers all they could handle, really. It was a 7-game series. Some odd results in some of the games, but nonetheless, a 7-game series. Of course, the Panthers went on to win another Stanley Cup. In the offseason, there's big changes. Marner is out. They've made some additions. What do you make of the changes that Brad Treliving has made, and some of them that he had to make, obviously, with Marner wanting out via free agency?
Yeah, I really do. This will come as maybe a meaningful reassurance to Leaf fans because, that market, they want a winner, and they wanted a winner a decade and a half ago.
Yeah.
They wanted a contender for the Stanley Cup. And I get that because they've been somewhat long suffering, especially for an original six franchise that, they have the wherewithal, the financial means to do just about whatever they want within the construct of a salary cap world, of course. But I will say, EJ, I do like the direction this group is going. I think they're trending in the right direction. Again, those advances, those developments may not come as quickly as Leaf fans like them, but this roster really is starting to mature and coalesce. I think there's a real spike coming for these Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they've got a really solid goaltending tandem. I like the way this back end is built. I think Tanev has added a lot there. He's given them, some real hardy stability and some responsibility in that respect. And then two, up front, it seems to be the kind of a forward core that's evolving into, yes, they have bright, shiny pieces that can score, but also they're starting to develop a little bit of a backbone, a little bit of a bite, and a guy like Matthew Nyes, of course, buttoning him down. And this is, one of those important offseason acquisitions that they've made. Again, I think they're heading in the right direction. Marner kind of had to shake out the way that it did shake out. I think he was as anxious to leave there as they were to take that space on within their payroll and dedicate it to other means. All that to say, perhaps there's another transaction coming there that gives them a little more pop where the forward core is concerned. But again, I do like the direction this group is going, and you follow the game as closer than I do. It's hard to build a winner overnight. I think this group's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say this, I really did like the addition of Nick Waugh from Vegas because, listen, they could have lost Marner for nothing. They get Nick Waugh, who's a good, 3-4 centerman on your team that can kill penalties and help you as a second unit power play guy. He's a very versatile guy. He's a big, long player down the middle. And then, the addition, the more recent addition now of Dakota Joshua from Vancouver, I think he's a really good fit. I mean, I would imagine, Stu, that Brad Treliving is looking at his roster and figuring out ways in a 7-game series to try to handle a very difficult Florida Panthers team, and you have to be a little tougher, and I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I do. I agree with that. Waugh, I think it makes you, there's some offensive upside there, makes you a little sturdier. Let's go back to certainly Nyes. I want to just, work in another point there. But I do enjoy your point, appreciate your point about Dakota Joshua. Again, a guy with good-sized forward, sturdy, wins a share of puck battles, can filter pucks to the net. And again, I think there's more to come where Joshua is concerned. I think there's plenty of of ceiling left there. But Nyes, it's worth making the point in the following way. Here's a guy that's been really solid the last 2 seasons, demonstrates all kinds of offensive upside, but he's really in the infancy of his NHL career. He's shown us, he can be consistent from one year to the next, even in a market. It's not an easy market to play in for a young guy. And, that's a guy that he'll give this group some organic improvement. So again, they may not have had the sexiest, the splashiest summer, but these are I think these are important adds that are reshaping the identity in a really significant way for these Leafs.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you on Nyes, too. I mean, there's a Toronto Maple Leaf draft pick that they've drafted, developed, and I thought he really has taken quite a few steps in the last couple of years and signed to a longer-term deal now. I mean, they're going to be asking Matthew Nyes to do more, and we'll see if he's up to the challenge. I think he will be. I think he will.
I do. I agree with you. I do. And he's been given a lot of responsibility. I think he's performed well with that responsibility and with people that remain a part of this roster that he's developed some chemistry and some familiarity with. So there's an uptick there, and I expect to see that continue.
So Marner goes to the Vegas Golden Knights, and I'll ask you, Stu, because I've asked a couple people now since the transaction, at the free agent window deadline there, the sign and trade to Vegas. He'll come back to Toronto on January the 23rd. The two teams, Vegas and Toronto, will meet twice in 8 days. What do you expect it will be like in Toronto on that Friday night when Mitch Marner steps onto the ice wearing that Golden Knights uniform and a different number 93 in Vegas?
Well, I think it'll be interesting. I think unfairly, Marner caught more than his share of the criticism for this group falling short. He's one piece in a 23-player puzzle that maybe could have given you a little bit more. And I'm focusing, of course, on the postseason. I mean, that's really where the anxiety around past Leafs performances have lied for that fan base. But Marner, in my estimation, got more of the flack than maybe he really deserved. And he's a guy, you look at the last year postseason, EJ, he was a point per game player. Again, could he use some more playoff DNA to his game? Perhaps, but that roster itself was somewhat short of that playoff DNA, that playoff identity. And I think that's why he kind of suffers some of the, the liability, the responsibility unjustly that he does. Having said all that, the fan base, as he comes back, you know as well as I do, I think the blue collar crowd that's mostly outside of the venue where this group plays, would, if they had their druthers, if they could voice a concern uniformly together, they might take it out on Marner. That white collar crowd, I think, kind of gets the point that I'm making, and he was just one piece of a roster that fell short. I think they remember him fondly. I think they treat him with class and respect.
All right. Well, we will see. That's a date that's certainly circled on the calendar for all hockey fans to kind of see how things go when he returns to Toronto. Stu, I want to change gears here because, it's so interesting to me. Whenever I'm out on the road with you or when I'm around you and the fans, they find out who you are. They're so interested to talk to you. And because, let's face it, fighting in hockey has been something that's been around for a long time. Yeah. And you were part of an era of hockey with some of the, most well-known fighters ever to play, and you were right at the very top of that list. And there was a lot of nasty scraps that you were involved in over the years. But as we got ready for this, you reminded me that one of your more memorable altercations, let's say, took place against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it ended up costing you a 10-game suspension. Yeah. Take us through what happened, because when you said it to me, I remembered that you were chasing guys around and you were very unhappy with what had gone on during that game. So give me a reminder take us back to that.
That's a wonderful euphemism to insert there. I was unhappy.
You were unhappy.
Because I think the tagline on the YouTube clip says Grimson goes crazy.
You're such a nice young man. I mean, I can't get, when I see you now, it's hard to watch these fights on and it's like, is this the same guy? But like I said, fans they run up to you. I know Patrick Sharp one night years ago played in the league for many years. He couldn't get enough of like the different stories. He was like in your ear, just trying to find out all these details. Let the fans know about what happened against the Leafs that night.
It was a really crazy time. It goes back to Chicago and Toronto were a great rivalry back in the day. Remember, that was the days of the old Norris division.
That's right.
Fondly referred to as the Chuck Norris division for reasons I'm about to backfill on. But we were playing in Chicago. I think it was probably more like a 4-goal spread late in the game. And, when games get like that, especially with rival teams, it can get a little bit, let me use the word pissy here. It can get a little pissy at the end of the game. So I'm out on the ice. Steve Larmer goes down. He blocks a shot in our end, and the puck ends up underneath him after he's blocked the shot. Yeah. Wendell Clark comes in, and he just kind of pitchforked Larmer right in the midsection, trying to pry the puck loose, but, more to the point for Wendell, trying to start something, right? Yeah. So everybody kind of piles on these two guys as that happens, and then it turned into a full-scale line brawl. I've been escorted over to our players' bench. If you ever watch this clip, I get escorted over to our players' bench, and Mike Keenan, my coach, is trying to grab me at the time and kind of talk me out of doing anything further. So things are starting to settle down. But I pointed over at Bob Halkitis, former Leafs defenseman, pretty tough guy in his own right. And he was paired off with Brian Marchment. May he rest in peace. And Marchment was actually in a full screen at the time because a week or two before he had suffered a fractured orbital. Okay. And I'm motioning at Halkitis because they're just paired off. Nobody's really doing anything. They're just simply paired off at that point. Yeah. But I motioned at Halkitis. I said, don't you do anything to touch him, thinking about Brian's face, right? Yeah. But that was like, that's like pouring gas on the fire. Halkitis all of a sudden recognizes I've made my button very bright red and very visible. He pushes my button, and then I'm trying. That's when everything kind of goes crazy, and I start trying to get to Halkitis and Marchment. I get intercepted by Dave Ellett. I get intercepted by Doug Gilmore is in there. Ray Scapinello tries to take me down. Dan Marawelli, the head official, tries to take me down. EJ, it was the craziest set of circumstances. And at the end of the day, I mean, you're right. I got 10 games. It was tagged abusive official, but it was just like, I raced around half clothed doing absolutely nothing. And I should say I was doing absolutely nothing, just creating chaos and havoc, but really didn't hurt anybody. And I got 10 games for it.
Wow. That's great. I mean, I can see, what? You're being a good teammate. You're trying to protect the guy that, shouldn't be fighting in that situation. Right. I mean, I give you credit for being a good teammate in that spot, but I don't know. Abuse of officials. It was just abuse of anybody that was in your way. Pretty much.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I wasn't too selective about it was officials or anybody in a Leafs jersey.
Let me ask you about Ty Domi, because you had a couple of scraps with him over the years. Some in Toronto. I think there was one when he was in Winnipeg. But I watched some of those fights, and it was kind of a battle of styles because you're so long and, you were dangerous because you had a long reach. And, I mean, your fist is the size of my head, which I hope those two things never meet. But, what was it like against Domi? Because he was one of those guys that tried to stay inside you and didn't let you get stretched out. He was a strong guy. It was like a lot of infighting, it seemed like, in those fights.
Yeah. Yeah, Ty, he was kind of in some respects he was a little bit undersized, but still heavy enough to be in that heavyweight category. Yeah. I think he probably tipped him at 225, 230. But, he probably conceded 6 inches to guys my size or so. I think Ty was maybe 5'9", 5'10", if that. Yeah. But the one, the couple things he did have that really worked in his favor, whenever you you fought him, he was always kind of punching up at you, and you're vulnerable here, right, in terms of your lower jaw and those areas of your face. So, he used that to his advantage. And Ty, let me tell you, he had a head like a medicine ball. You could bring a baseball bat, EJ. You could tee off on that head all day long, and he'd just look at you and smirk and smile and keep doing what Ty does. He was a tough guy. I give him all kinds of credit because he took on all comers. Again, he was undersized, but he took on all comers, and he always held his own if he didn't prevail. And you knew you had your hands full every time you were fighting Ty. And I will say this, he doesn't get enough recognition for this either. Ty played a regular turn and he was pretty effective. He really was pretty effective. He played a third line, sometimes fourth line role most of his career, but he was a pretty effective player and enjoyed a really, for a guy with his skill set and his role, his personality, he was very effective. Had a long career, good long career.
Yeah, no question about it. And his son, of course, plays with the Leafs now. So the legacy lives on. Let me ask you, you brought up Wendell Clark before, and he was a tough character. I mean, did you ever get tied up with one? You must have at least had one with him.
Do you know, I don't think Wendell and I ever fought in the NHL, but here's my favorite Wendell story. So we grew up playing against each other when we were just boys in the Western Hockey League. And two sides of another great rivalry, the Regina Pats and the Regina Pats, my team, and the Saskatoon Blades were just a couple hours down the highway from one another back in the prairies of Western Canada. And it was a really good rivalry, really tough teams back then. So Wendell and I tangled one night. And again, Wendell's a guy that he probably gives me 5 or 6 inches. This is a guy that really didn't have any business fighting in the heavyweight category, but did because he was just wired that way and he was tough enough to do that. But we got going one night, might have been a line brawl, but he and I got squared off. And I'll never forget, I hit him. I hit him solid right on the button. He went down to his knees, and I promise you, EJ, before I could recoil and get another one off, Wendell was right back up on his feet, giving me all I could deal with, on the back pedal. He was a tough guy. Him and there was another guy, Johnny Marner, was a tough defenseman that played with the Regina Pats, one of my teammates. He and Wendell used to go all the time. They were very similar in size. And you would just stand back and watch these two guys go at it. It was the best middleweight, some of the best middleweight fights you'll ever watch. John Marner and Wendell Clark.
Wow.
But he was a tough guy.
I'm sure there were some nasty battles there, I can imagine, with Regina and Saskatoon in those days. Hey, I got one more for you, Stu, before I let you go. And it's a little off the beaten trail, but, in going through your career again, you spent, I guess it was 3 seasons in the International League as you were preparing to come to the NHL. You played with Salt Lake Golden Eagles, I think it was, Calgary's minor league team. And you had you played with Theo Fleury there. You played with, oddly enough, Shane Churla there. I mean, that must have been a menacing duo. And then Stefan Matteau, I think, also played there. Yeah. But the thing I wanted to ask you is, we have a team there, the Utah Mammoth now. Did you ever think, going way back to that time in the late 80s, that NHL hockey would come to Salt Lake City and would end up being so popular?
Yeah. Well, that was back in a time before the league was really aggressively expanding its footprint. So that question would have never occurred to me or asked of me. But had you put that question to me way back then, I probably would have said the following: wow, seems crazy, but these Salt Lake City, these Utah fans, this is not a traditional hockey market. It's a very different culture, a very different, really kind of an untapped area of the country in terms of seeing an NHL franchise. But all that to say, EJ, given the context, we used to draw 10,000, 11,000 people consistently for minor league hockey, out there in the Wasatch Valley. And it was, we had great fans. It was my first pro experience. That's where I cut my teeth as a pro, and really my first experience living outside of Canada in the US. Yeah. I loved it. The community was great. The people were great. You could golf, some of the best golf courses right there, kind of in the heart of the Wasatch Valley, right there in Salt Lake. And you were 45 minutes to Park City, some of the best skiing in certainly all of North America, perhaps the world. And it's this charming little European-like town up in Park City, but it just had the best of everything. And it was such a great, great experience. I loved it. And I will say now, just watching it all unfold, it makes great sense. It'll be a wonderful union, NHL hockey and Salt Lake City, the city itself, and that fan base. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful addition and maybe nexus for our game to that franchise.
Yeah, no question. And
I love it.
You had some great experiences there, Stu. Maybe we'll get you back on at some point and talk a little about that, because those are the battles and fights that maybe aren't as well documented. But I'm sure they were nasty nights there in Salt Lake City and on the road
EJ,
in the NHL.
Just as a teaser for our next, fans remark at me all the time, wow, Stu, I can't believe it. You had over 2,000 penalty minutes in your career. Would you believe I played and they're right, that's a lot of penalty minutes.
Yeah.
But I played the equivalent of about 1,000 games. About 3 seasons. I played the equivalent of about 3 seasons total in the IHL with Salt Lake. And I had well over 1,000 penalty minutes. Like my dance card was full. Every night. Yeah. Two partners a night, every night.
Yeah.
Over 1,000 penalty minutes, and not a minor penalty at a time. those 1,000 were earned the hard way, fighting majors all.
I guess I'll just leave it with this. You were unhappy quite a bit.
I was unhappy.
Time. Unhappy.
That's a very wonderful euphemistic way to put it. Yes.
All right. Well, listen, Stu, thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I'll be down in Nashville next week, so hopefully I'll get to see you there. And I'm sure I'll see you back in Secaucus at some point. But thanks for the time today. That was Stu Grimson, my buddy, my colleague at the NHL Network, right here on the Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.